Spring Television. Ours it is.
Good evening and welcome to Spring Global on Western Spring Television. Now the headlines. Gunman reportedly kills at least 9 persons in Kubwa area of the Federal Capital Territory. United Kingdom pledges to give France £500 million to help stop migrants crossing the Channel. Chinese parliament names Li Qiang, a close ally of President Xi Jinping, as premier. My name is Evelyn Ohiola. We begin with security matters. At least 9 residents of the Grow Homes estate along Kuchibiyi in the Kubwa area of the Federal Capital Territory have been reportedly kidnapped by gunmen. The gunmen, numbering about 20, were said to have stormed the estate around 11:30 p.m. yesterday. According to a resident of the community, the gunmen kidnapped at least 9 persons, including children and women, from 2 different apartments in the estate. The spokesperson for the police force in Abuja, SP Josephine Ade, confirmed the incident, stating that the force and estate security are still combing the bushes in the area to ensure the victims are rescued. She urged the residents of the area not to panic, asking them to help the police with credible information that could lead to the arrest of the assailants. In other news, the Katsina State chapter of the New Nigeria People's Party, NNPP, has sacked its deputy governorship candidate, Mutaka Rabe Dama, the state party chairman, Sani Liti, and other top executives. The NNPP director, Media and Publicity, Nasiru Usman Kankia, disclosed these to newsmen on the decision of the party yesterday in Katsina. It said the individuals were sacked for anti-party activities, including Thursday's endorsement of the All Progressive Congress candidate, Dr. Diko Rada. It would be recalled that a section of the state executive leadership of the party convened at an unauthorized meeting on Thursday and backed the candidacy of the APC. To the Russia-Ukraine war, 3 civilians were killed in Russia's shelling of Kherson in southern Ukraine this morning, with at least 1 more died in the eastern Donetsk region. Regional Governor Alexander Prokundin said 3 people, including an elderly woman, were also wounded during the artillery shelling of the city. Pavlo Kirilenko, Donetsk regional governor, said 1 person was killed and at least 3 civilians were injured in the city of Kostyantynivka following several rounds of Russian shelling during the day. Donetsk region has seen some of the heaviest fighting since Russia sent troops into Ukraine on February 24th last year. Meanwhile, mercenary force boss Yevgeny Prigozhin said his Wagner private army has opened recruitment centers in 42 Russian cities as he seeks to replenish the army's ranks after heavy losses in fighting for the Ukrainian city of Bakhmut. In an upbeat audio message yesterday, Mr. Prigozhin said new fighters were coming forward but gave no indication of the numbers involved. He also said ammunition supplies from the Russian army had improved but remained a concern. Wagner mercenaries have been at the forefront of some of the fiercest fighting in Russia's attempt to take control of Bakhmut, where the Ukrainian army is still holding out after more than 7 months of warfare. In the meantime, British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and French President Emmanuel Macron have pledged to train Ukraine Navy. Mr. Sunak disclosed this in a press conference after meeting French President Emmanuel Macron in Paris yesterday. The British Premier noted that the training will give Ukrainian forces a decisive advantage on the battlefield and help it win the war.
Further, to strengthen our security and defense cooperation. We've agreed to train Ukrainian Marines, helping to give Ukraine a decisive advantage on the battlefield and for Ukraine to win this war. To increase the interoperability of our forces, harnessing the full potential of the combined Joint Expeditionary Force. To promote security and stability in the Indo-Pacific, coordinating our carrier deployments, And we will jointly explore the development of complex weapons like air defense, combat air, and long-range weapons. Now, for decades, we've been two of the world's biggest defense powers and leading contributors to NATO, and we will continue to stand together for freedom, democracy, and the rule of law. Finally, today there has also been a celebration of the richness of our cultures, all that we give to each other and all that we learn from each other. So we've agreed to make it easier for our children to go on school exchanges, and our museum.
Similarly, the United Kingdom will give France almost £500 million over 3 years to help stop migrants crossing the English Channel in small boats. The cash was announced at a summit in Paris between UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and President Emmanuel Macron, who said France would also contribute. The money will go toward an extra 500 officers and a new detention center in France, but this will not be fully operational until the end of 2026. The UK had planned to pay France around £63 million this year to tackle the problem. France also announced it will step up its funding of enforcement, but has not said by how much. Elsewhere in Europe, a man who shot dead 7 people in Germany was visited by police last month after a tip-off raised concerns about his mental health. Local police disclosed this, noting that he cooperated with officers and there were not enough grounds to take away his gun at the time. The 35-year-old suspect, named only as Philip F., had a license to own the weapon for sporting purposes. This comes as the country's interior minister said the European nation is preparing a new law involving tighter curbs on gun ownership. Meanwhile, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz said the death toll could rise. 7 people, including an unborn baby, were killed in Thursday's attack, which unfolded at a Jehovah's Witness meeting hall in the city. In the Middle East, Bahrain has revoked visas issued to Human Rights Watch to attend an international parliamentary conference days after the watch raised concerns about the Gulf state's rights record. The rights group disclosed that visas issued for 2 members of the group on January 30 were cancelled on March 8, 3 days before the conference starts. Bahrain, a U.S. ally, will host the 146th Assembly on the Inter-Parliamentary Union, an international organization with the motto for democracy for everyone. The event would have marked the first time that HRW representatives had been able to enter the Gulf states since 2012. HRW, which holds permanent observer status with the IPU, had on Monday called for conference attendees to raise concerns about what it called the serious repression of human rights in Bahrain. In Asia, Japanese offered tearful prayers today on the anniversary of the deadly tsunami that triggered the Fukushima disaster, but public support for nuclear power is growing as memories of the 2011 meltdown fade. A minute's silence was observed nationwide at 5:46 GMT, the precise moment when a 9.0 magnitude quake, the 4th strongest in Earth's recorded history, devastated northeastern Japan 12 years ago. The undersea quake unleashed a tsunami that left around 18,500 people dead or missing and overwhelmed cooling systems at the Fukushima Daiichi plant, leading to the worst nuclear catastrophe since Chernobyl. All of Japan's nuclear reactors were taken offline after the disaster, and the majority remain out of action today. You're still watching Spring Global on Western Spring Television. We will be right back after this break.
It was
a Euro-American trade in slaves, by which 12.5 million Africans were captured from their indigenous homelands and transported via the Atlantic to Europe and the Americas. The transatlantic slave, also known as triangular trade, was the worst form of man's inhumanity to man and the most costly in human life of all long-distance global migrations. Hundreds of Africans chained tightly to plank beds in the belly of slave ships in horrific conditions were transported via the Atlantic and stripped of all human dignity on arrival in Europe and America. It is the greatest crime the Caucasians committed against the black race. It is impossible to discuss the transatlantic slave trade without a copious reference to impoverishment and underdevelopment of Africa and its peoples. The triangular trade left the continent in ruins. Western Springer Television identifies transatlantic slave trade as a watershed event in history. Aminatu, the legendary Queen of Zazzau, is best known to historians as Queen Amina of Zaria, an old walled town and capital of the Hausa state of Zazzau. Amina was a great warrior and the first woman to rule the ancient kingdom of Zazzau. Her 34 years as queen witnessed an unprecedented expansion of Zazzau by conquests. Queen Amina of Zaria belongs to the class of Amazons by the might of her army and her strings of conquests. She opened Zaria to trans-border trade and was said to have initiated kola nut cultivation in the ancient kingdom. The Hausa Muslim figure was born in 1533 and died in 1610 at the age of 77 years. Folklores remember Aminatu, the Queen of Zazzau, as a brave, smart and talented leader whose giant statue now adorns the National Arts Theatre in Lagos, Nigeria, while many educational institutions bear her name. Western Spring Television identifies Queen Amina as a watershed character in history. The 1914 Amalgamation Treaty is synonymous to the birth of Nigeria. Frederick Lugard, a British Army captain and an outlaw who struck gold in Africa, became the instrument used by destiny to make it happen. The amalgamation of Nigeria was designed for economic reasons by the colonial administration to offset Northern Protectorate budget deficit by Southern Protectorate surplus returns. The amalgamation had ad initio created imbalance in the economic political structure of Nigeria and was responsible for the persistent hiccups in the efforts to forge a united country till today. Nigeria's amalgamation was labeled as the mistake of 1914 by native northern conservatives who neither wanted it nor contributed anything significant to its sustenance. Western Springer Television identifies with Amalgamation Treaty of 1914 as a watershed event in history. Born Jeremiah Oyeni Obafemi on March 6, 1905, Obafemi Awolowo was a prime architect of Nigeria's independence and most consummate advocate of free education and social welfare in Africa's most populous nation. Erudite politician, thinker and philosopher, Awo was fondly addressed by associates and political colleagues, brought his unique attributes to bear on governance in the defunct Western region. He administered as leader of government business and the premier between 1955 and 1958. Obafemi Awolowo's premiership witnessed pioneering in multi-sectoral policy initiatives and execution. The Western region under his administration paraded several enviable records. First television station in Africa, first real estate in Nigeria, first high-rise building in Nigeria, first modern sports stadium in Nigeria, first agricultural settlement in Nigeria, first modern civil service secretariat in Nigeria, and first industrial estate in Nigeria. His face is on 100 naira denomination as a mark of honor for his distinguished services to his country. Western Spring Television identifies Obafemi Awolowo as a major character in history.
Thank you so much for sticking with us. Moving on, China has named Li Chang, a close confidant of President Xi Jinping, as the next country's premier, placing him nominally in charge of the world's second largest economy. Mr. Li was nominated by President Xi and appointed to the position with no dissenting voices at this morning's session of the National People's Congress in Beijing. He replaces outgoing Premier Li Keqiang. The confirmation of Mr. Li's position came a day after President Xi secured an unrivaled third five-year term as president, setting him up to possibly rule for life. The 63-year-old Mr. Li is best known for having enforced a brutal zero-COVID lockdown in Shanghai last spring as party boss of the China's financial hub. 3 former members of a Hong Kong group that organized annual vigils to mark China's 1989 Tiananmen Square massacre have been sentenced to 4.5 months in jail. Cho Ang-tung, a prominent Hong Kong pro-democracy activist, was sentenced at a magistrate's court this morning alongside co-defendants Tang Wang-kwan and Xu Ong-kwang, announcing a custodial sentence that fell short of the 6-month maximum jail term allowed for the charge. Magistrate Peter Law said national security is cardinally important to public interests and the whole nation. The now disbanded alliance was the main organizer of Hong Kong's June 4 candlelight vigil for victims of China's Tiananmen Square, where in 1989 Chinese troops and tanks were deployed against peaceful pro-democracy protests. Still in Asia, police in India have arrested 3 men in eastern Bihar state in connection with the death of a Muslim man who was attacked because he was suspected of carrying beef. The victim, Nasim Qureshi, was killed earlier this week after being attacked by a mob on suspicion of carrying beef, the sale and consumption of which is restricted in some parts of the country by local governments. According to a police statement in court, Mr. Qureshi was allegedly surrounded by more than 20 people and attacked, and when the police intervened, he died on the way to the hospital. Ramchandra Tiwari, head of Rusulpur police station in Bihar, where the crime took place, told newsmen by phone today that 3 people have been arrested in connection with the incident. Moving on, an explosion during an award ceremony for journalists in Afghanistan's northern Balkh province has killed at least 1 person and wounded 5 others. According to the Taliban-appointed spokesman for Balkh police, Mohammad Asif Waziri, the explosion took place at the Tabian Farang Center in Mazar-e-Sharif, the capital of the province, as journalists gathered for the award event this morning. Mr. Waziri confirms the casualty toll, adding that 3 children were among the injured. The incident comes 2 days after a bomb in Mazar-e-Sharif killed the provincial governor, Daoud Muzmal, and 2 others, while 4 others were wounded. In the United States, more than 9,000 California residents are under evacuation orders as a new atmospheric river brought heavy rain, thunderstorms, and strong winds swelling rivers which flooded several major highways. In Santa Cruz County, a creek bloated by rain destroyed a portion of the main street in Socorro, a town of 10,000 people, isolating several neighborhoods. County officials said crews were working to remove trees and other debris and find a way for people to cross the creek. Emergency officials have warned people to stay off the roads if they can and to carefully heed flash flood warnings. Now to some business matters. U.S. regulators have shut down Silicon Valley Bank and taken control of its customers' deposit in the largest failure of a U.S. bank since 2008. The moves came as the firm, a key tech lender, was scrambling to raise money to plug a loss from the sale of assets affected by higher interest rates. Its troubles prompted a rush of customer withdrawals and sparked fears about the state of the banking sector. Officials said they acted to protect insured depositors. Now let's talk sport. Philip Billing helped Bournemouth secure a hard-fought win over Champions League chasers Liverpool to temporarily move out of the relegation zone. The Reds were brought back down to earth after last week's 7-0 thrashing of Manchester United, as the Cherries, who started with the weekend bottom, did their survival chances a power of good. Liverpool were punished for poor defending when the unmarked Philip Billing in the 28th minute struck from 8 yards for his 6th Premier League goal of the season after fine work by Dango Ouattara. Mohamed Salah, who became Liverpool's all-time top scorer, Liverpool all-time top Premier League scorer with 129 goals last week, blazed away a penalty in the 69th minute. The win catapults Bournemouth to 16 before the afternoon kickoffs, while Jurgen Klopp's side missed the chance to go fourth for the first time this season after a lethargic display. Lawyers for Tiger Woods have denied that he and his ex-girlfriend, who is suing him, had a deal that allowed her to share his Florida home with him. Erica Herman has seeking $30 million from a trust held by Mr. Woods, claiming she was tricked into packing her bags for a holiday, then locked out. A non-disclosure agreement she signed with Mr. Woods in 2017 requires that any legal disputes be settled out of court. She is trying to have that agreement cancelled by a court. Ms. Herman, who managed a restaurant owned by Mr. Woods before their relationship began, has filed 2 lawsuits in Martin County, Florida. Before we end Spring Global, here is a recap of our top stories. At least 9 residents of the Graham's estate along Kuchibiyi in Kubwa area of the Federal Capital Territory have been reportedly kidnapped by gunmen. The United Kingdom will give France almost £500 million over 3 years to help stop migrants crossing the English Channel in small boats. China has named Li Qiang, a close confidant of President Xi Jinping, as the country's next premier, placing him nominally in charge of the world's second largest economy. Remember to follow us on our social media handles on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter at Western Spring Television. You can also watch us live on our YouTube channel at Western Spring Television. I am Evelyn Ohiola. Many thanks for watching.